This is a reading from Mark chapter 5, verse 21 through 34. Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. "My little daughter is dying," he said. "Please come and lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live." Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, "If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed." Immediately, the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around to the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" His disciples said to him, "Look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me?" But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over."
Hope everybody appreciates the homage to 90s grunge. Smells Like Teen Spirit was one of the first albums I ever owned. Hey, this might surprise you if you've been here a long time, if you listen to me speak a lot, it might surprise you to know I do actually spend a lot of time, like many, many hours, thinking about, reading for, praying over, and then ultimately writing my sermons. I know it probably feels sometimes like I'm just kind of riffing, but there's actually a lot of prep that goes into this. And every sermon that I give, so over 20 years now, I've been delivering messages to people. I always have one point. Like there's one idea that all the reading, all the thinking, all the praying, all the writing, it's so that I can communicate one thing, one basic idea for any given message. But for 20 plus years now, I've had a recurring experience. I give a sermon, I'm done giving the sermon, and someone will come up and will thank me for saying something that positively impacted them. Only whatever it was that positively impacted them, I either, one, never said, two, I did say, but I didn't intend to say. Meaning, like you could go back to my planning and I never intended to say it, it just kind of came out of my mouth almost like a fluke. And three, typically has absolutely nothing to do with the main point that I actually spent hours preparing the sermon for. So again, if you're new, just prep yourself. If this sermon impacts you in any way, it's probably going to be something I didn't say, something I didn't intend to say, or something that isn't central to the actual idea that I do intend to say. Now, you might think as a communicator, that could be very frustrating. You know, people coming up and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said that." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't say that, so I'm not sure what we're talking about." I just chalk it, it's not frustrating to me. I chalk this up to, there are hundreds of people in a room, and you all come with something going on in your lives. Something you're thinking about, something you care about, something that's happening in your world. I don't know all those things. I can't possibly store all of those things. And whatever I thought God wanted me to talk about, I chalk all of those experiences up to the Spirit of God meeting each and every one of you exactly where you are. That God knows where you are, and that God actually does care about you and cares about the things that are going on in your lives and speaks to you where you are. Because that's the only place that anyone can speak to you, right? Is where you are. You come as you are, and God meets you where you are. So this Sunday, I'm starting this new series that I'm calling Come As You Are. And the first thing we got to say is the obvious. Everybody who comes to whatever label you want to use, church, religion, faith, God, Jesus. Anybody who comes to faith or Jesus for the first time, or comes back to faith, Jesus for the first time in a long time, they're coming for a reason. I'm going to use the word selfish or self-oriented reason. They want something. They need something that's important to them, and they have gotten to a place where they're willing to come to Jesus' church faith to try to get it figured out. Now, we'll talk more in a minute about why you come to Jesus, but everybody who comes to Jesus comes looking for something. I mean, just the stories of his life, that's how it worked. Everybody who approached Jesus, they wanted something from him. They wanted to see. They wanted to be cured of their leprosy. They wanted to be able to walk again. They wanted to be liberated from an evil spirit. They wanted food. They were hungry. In this story, they want a daughter healed, or a woman wants a bleeding condition healed, dealt with. Dustin reminded us a couple weeks, Jesus even sometimes asked people, blind Bartimaeus, his two disciples, James and John, sometimes Jesus would ask people, what do you want me to do for you? Like he assumed, if you are coming to me, you obviously want something. So what is it that you want? But even when he didn't ask the question, I imagine he always assumed it was true. That anybody who approached him for some reason that was important to them, something that was selfish or self-oriented. That continued to be true for the early church. People, both Jews and Gentiles, continued to come to the church for healings, exorcisms, for food, for a place to belong. This hasn't changed. Everybody who comes to God, faith, religion, church, Jesus, for the first time or back for the first time in a long time is coming because they have a reason. They want something, they need something. And that isn't a problem. That's not a problem. It is not a problem for you or for anyone to come to church or faith, God, Jesus, because there's something going on in your life that is important to you, that matters to you. If it matters to you, it matters to God. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean God cares about all the things you care about. It means God cares about you. And if there's something going on in your life that is important to you, God certainly cares about that. So it's not bad to come to Jesus for selfish. Selfish or self-oriented shouldn't be interpreted as a pejorative. It's not a bad thing. If you have something in your life that's so important to you that it eventually brings you to Jesus, that's not a bad thing. We take this woman as an example in our story. The story says she suffered from a bleeding condition for many years, 12 years. She had a bleeding issue. I'm sure that was a very difficult situation. It was probably physically painful. I'm sure it was socially inconvenient. If you know anything about Jewish religious law, she would have been considered ritually unclean, which meant she couldn't do things like go to church or attend a dinner party. Now, if you have anything in your life like that, something that is connected to everything else, you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything without thinking about it. It's implicated in everything. It's exhausting. Physically painful, socially inconvenient, psychologically exhausting. Did people know that she had this problem? If they did, she spent most of that 12 years by herself. If they didn't, which I suspect is the case, then she was carrying around a secret that was negatively impacting other people all the time and they didn't know it. This is a huge issue in her life. It's always there, front and center, connected to everything. And she gets to a place where she either can no longer or no longer wants to live with it. She comes to Jesus. No problem for him. At no point in the story does he shame her or make her feel bad that she came to him looking for something that was important to her. He never did that to anybody. When somebody came to him because they had something going on in their life that was important to them, he simply acknowledged, you're coming to me because you have something that you want. And he was perfectly okay with that. It is never a problem to come to faith, religion, church, God, Jesus, because you have something in your life that's important to you that you want, perhaps even hope God can help you with. I think God, through Christ and the church, wants to meet you exactly where you are, not only because that is the only place God can meet anyone, is right where you are, but also because that's the most likely way to engender love for God in you. I do not assume that you love God. But I do believe if you are ever going to love God, it's going to start by you experiencing God loving you, God meeting you, fulfilling a need, helping you in some way, healing you, saving you, doing something for you that you perceive you need. That's where love of God begins. That's how this works. Why do you come to God in the first place? Why did this woman? Story says that she suffered this bleeding condition for many years. So she went and saw many doctors. That makes sense. Right? Bleeding is a medical condition. You go to medical professionals to deal with medical issues. Anybody in her culture would have done the same thing, I imagine. The story says that she saw so many doctors that she emptied her bank account. But she didn't get better. In fact, she got worse. So here's someone who has an issue in her life that is so important to her, so connected to everything, that she can no longer live with it. She's not willing to continue for this to just be the way it is. She does all the things that her culture would have said, try this, try this, try this. And she did. Not once, not twice. For 12 years of her life, she earnestly tried to resolve this issue in all of the ways that anybody would have said, I think that's the way you do it. But it was only when her desperation to have the problem solved ran up against the nothing seems to be working, nothing else seems to be working anyway, that Jesus finally became well, I might as well give him a shot. Now, I don't know if this is how it works for people anymore. I do think it's supposed to work this way. And here's what I mean by that. There's an irony to this story. This woman is dishonest. She's hiding. She's lying about her situation. But she's doing it honestly. Meaning she is actually acknowledging and trying to deal very seriously with something that is important to her. She's not pretending it's not an issue. She's not pretending she doesn't have it. She's acknowledging she does have it, that it's a problem, and she is doing everything she can do, culturally speaking, to deal with it. So she may be dishonest in the way that she approaches Jesus, but at least she's honest about what it is she's trying to do. If I have a primary concern as a pastor in 21st century Western culture, it's we're not honest anymore. At least she acknowledged that she had a need and she wanted desperately to do something about that. Every time we get together as a sermon planning team, every message we prepare, every series we dream up, whatever the thing is that we're going to talk about here, for me, the thing below the thing, below the thing, below the thing, below the thing, is what you want. Like, I get concerned that we don't even want to get well. We don't even acknowledge that we're unwell. We're so wealthy, we're so comfortable, we have so much stuff, so much education, so many ways to distract ourselves and numb ourselves and anesthetize ourselves that we don't even recognize we're bleeding out. Or if we do recognize we have a problem, we're still in that kind of like numb it, patch it, numb it, patch it. It's a little better for now, patch it again. It's a little better for now, patch it again. And then we just get used to living that way. Kind of like when you have an injury, you have some kind of a medical problem, or you have something that's hurt or damaged. And instead of getting to the bottom of like what's causing the pain so that we can try to solve what's actually causing the pain, we just go get medication so it doesn't hurt so bad. Yeah, it doesn't hurt so bad, but it doesn't fix you either. So yeah, she's dishonest in the way she comes to Jesus, but at least she's honest about what it is she's trying to do. And she's fought long enough to be honest about the fact that that answer and that answer and that answer and that answer aren't good enough. It isn't going to work. That's when she comes to Jesus. I think that's how it's supposed to work for all of us. I think all of us are supposed to have something in our lives. Richard Beck calls them obsessios. Issues in our life, topics, something that gnaws at your spirit. It troubles your soul. It plagues your mind. Something that you're not supposed to have to live with. Could be something like guilt. You're plagued by guilt over things that you've done or over things that you've left undone. You need some way of dealing with that, some resolution to it. It could be something like injustice in the world. You look at the world and you just don't understand why it is structured in such a way that some people win and some people lose. And you need some way of reconciling that. It could be suffering and death. You look at the world, at the terrible things that people suffer, at the terrible things that we inflict on one another. Maybe the terrible things you've done to other people or terrible things that have been done to you. And you need some way of dealing with that, living with that. It could be meaning. As far as you're concerned, everybody else is sleepwalking through the matrix, but you have to figure it out. You need to know, where do I come from? What is the meaning of life? How am I supposed to live? Where do I go when I die? Those are questions that you need answers to. It could be belonging. You just need to know you're loved, that you belong. Not just relationally, but like cosmically. Like your life means more than just the value you do or don't add to other people. It could even be something like your concern for the planet. Maybe you're someone who feels connected to the earth in ways that other people, it just doesn't make sense to. You're concerned about how it's being treated and you don't know what to do about that. Any one of these obsessios is like this woman's bleeding condition. It is supposed to be something that is so central to us. It gnaws at us, troubles our soul, plagues our mind, that if you're honest about it, if you take a step back for a minute, if you stop numbing yourself with one more pleasure or entertainment or experience, and you actually think about what it means to be human in this world, and then you were to go on an honest journey, you know what? Let's just for a second, let's pretend God doesn't exist. Let me take the guilt that I feel about all the things that I've done or things that I haven't done, and let me go out into the world and see if the world can help me with my guilt. You're going to discover that it can't. You're going to discover exactly what this woman discovered at every doctor she went to. If you're plagued by guilt, if you need meaning or a sense of belonging or how to deal with injustice or suffering or death in the world, if you just pretended like God didn't exist for a minute and went on an honest journey into the world and just asked, okay, what does the world have to offer me to resolve these issues? You are going to discover that you're going to end up woefully unsatisfied. None of those stories are going to be adequate enough to meet you where you are. That's what brings you to Jesus. That's what brought her eventually. The doctors didn't work. Well, you got to give Jesus a try. And this is the thing. You pursue God when you need God. You pursue God when you need God. The major lie is ever thinking you don't. You pursue God when you need God. The lie of Western culture is ever believing that you don't. But what will eventually bring you to God, faith, religion, Jesus for the first time or back for the first time in a long time is when you get to a place in your life where you have something you are not willing to live with anymore. And you go on an honest journey to try to have that resolved in other ways, and it doesn't work. It's at that point, and really only at that point, that God, Jesus, becomes maybe I should go there. Now, you can run into a problem even here, though, when you do that. It isn't just the world that tells small stories. You can turn the church into a small story real fast. You just take guilt as an example. I started following Christ when I was 16 years old, largely because I was racked by guilt over things I had done, things I had left undone. And the world did not have anything for me. It couldn't answer my questions. And so I came to Jesus. Imagine being in that shoes. You come to church because you're feeling guilty. The world can't help you with it, so you come here. And if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, you hear a story like the one I heard. You hear a story about a God whose love is unfailing, whose mercies are new every morning, who forgives you, who doesn't hold your wrongs against you. And I'm telling you, when I heard that story, it was so healing, so cathartic. I was exactly like this woman. I felt in my body that I was healed, that I knew my guilt had a place to go. And it changed my life. But right here is a critical moment. Because you notice what this woman does. As soon as she touches Jesus' robe and she feels in her body that she's been healed, what does she try and do? She tries to walk away. She came because she was concerned about one thing, bleeding, her bleeding problem. That's what brought her in the door. That's what she wanted help with. That's what she wanted from Jesus, and she got it. And that experience was so life-changing. Imagine, that moment, in her body, she knows it's done. I'm good. She's ready to walk away. Imagine if she had. Imagine if feeling that power had gone out from him and somebody had healed. Imagine if Jesus had not stopped and stopped her. Imagine if she had walked off. Jesus would never have been to her anything more than he was in that moment. For the rest of her life, Jesus would only ever be the miracle worker who cured my bleeding. That's it. And while that story was perfectly large enough for her in that moment, it was not going to be large enough for her for the rest of her life. And Jesus knew that. She didn't. He did. She would have walked away, content to just be fixed with her bleeding. Jesus stopped not because he was offended. It wasn't like Jesus was scandalized, like someone's trying to steal something from me. I think he stopped because he was worried. I think he stopped because he knew something she did not. If you come to me because of what you want, that's perfectly fine. I will meet you there. You come to me as you are, and I will meet you there. I will help you with that. But this is not the kind of thing where you come to me to get the thing you think you need and then walk away until you perceive you need something else, and then you come back, and then you walk away again, and then you come back, and then you walk away again. If he lets her walk away in that moment, that's all that relationship ever is. It becomes parasitic. Forever, Jesus will just be the guy who helps me. He heals my problems. But that's the thing. She did not need healing from a bleeding condition as much as she needed Jesus. She got healing from her bleeding condition because of him. You don't need forgiveness. You need Jesus. If you get Jesus, you get forgiveness. You don't need meaning. You need Jesus. You don't need identity. You need Jesus. You don't need answers to suffering, death, pain, injustice. You need Jesus. If you get him, all of the other things come with it. The risk here for this woman has become the plague of Western Christian culture, is that we have turned God into like Santa Claus or a cosmic gumball machine. That we treat God like God does things for us, and that's all there is to it. And when you do that, then faith for you is whatever he did for you initially. So you might be someone who thinks that the whole purpose of Christianity, let's say you came in because you were plagued with guilt, and God forgave you. Now you think the whole thing is about forgiveness. Like that's all it is. Like all of Christianity, the whole thing, if you were to boil it all down, it's about being forgiven. Being forgiven is important, but it is one small part of a much, 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 much larger reality that she would never have experienced as she walked away. She would have gotten what she wanted. She would not have gotten what she needed. And the same is true for us. Whatever brings you in the door, whatever brings you to faith for the first time or back for the first time in a long time is okay. Whatever it is, if you are on an honest journey trying to figure something out, trying to deal with something, have something resolved, and you come and you bring that to Jesus, he's good with that. He will meet you right there. He's happy to meet you right there. But whatever it is you think you need in coming to Jesus is not ultimately what you need if you think it's something other than him. You do not need things from God. You need God. Life is only found in God. The invitation for this woman, your faith has made you well. That word means saved. And saved doesn't mean you're now going to heaven when you die. Saved means like you get it. You're in it. You understand how it works. You've been made whole. The idea is not that you take something from God, but that you get God. You live with God, in God. You are created by God, for God, and the only life that is life is in God. So religion, faith, Christianity is not God is something that I go to when I perceive I need help, and God makes my life better. Christianity is that you have a God who loved you into existence, has sustained you in love, promises to redeem you in love, and is inviting you in all of the ways he helps you. He is inviting you to give your life to him as he gives his life to you, to live together in a union of love. That's how all of your needs are solved. Not only now, but ultimately. Because your greatest need is God in God's self. We're going to spend the rest of this series talking about the things that, if people are honest, may eventually bring them to Jesus, to give Jesus a try. Things like guilt, meaning, injustice, suffering, death, belonging, all these things. We're going to talk about the narratives that culture hands you. That if you are someone dealing with something like guilt, we're going to talk about what the world tells you to do with it and how unsatisfying that really is. But we will also talk about the way that this story can get small if you're not careful. That when God meets you where you are, if you just take it and run with it like the bleeding woman, you're going to miss out on what this whole thing is really all about. And that's union. Union with the God of love who created you. Actually living in God's divine nature, in relationship with God. Every day, all the time. I have no doubt. I have no doubt that this woman walked away from this encounter loving Jesus. I believe she did. And I know that part of that is because he helped her. And I know part of the reason that I love Jesus is because Jesus has helped me. And I know that if you're in this room and you've been in this room for any length of time, I know that if you love Jesus, it's because at some point he has helped you. But I think at some point, she came to love Jesus even if he didn't. There's a beautiful practice, part of the Jewish Shabbat ritual called a dayanu. And the refrain is, it would have been enough. The idea is, I'm grateful regardless. You didn't have to do any of it. You didn't have to do any of it. You didn't have to think me up in love to begin with, but you did. So if you had created me and then forgotten about me, it would have been enough. If you had created me and sustained me but didn't redeem me, that would have been enough. If you had created me and sustained me and redeemed me, but you don't hear my prayer right now, that would be enough. If you don't heal me right now, that'll be enough. If I don't get the answer I'm looking for right now, that'd be enough. If I don't understand things, that'll be enough. If life is hard right now and I don't understand why, that'd be enough. Because I don't love you because you fix my problems. Right? I love you because you deserve that. Because you're worthy of it. Because you have loved me. I think that's where this woman got eventually. It's where we're all supposed to get. We don't use God for our own purposes, but we live with God and in God because of who God is. God has loved us, we love God, and that's it. That's all of life. We're going to finish our service this morning by taking communion together. If you are new here, I want you to know you're invited to join us. Everyone's invited to come to the table. Communion has become for us kind of a response to the word. That when you come forward in a moment and you take the elements that represent Jesus' broken body and shed blood, you are remembering. You are remembering that yours is a God who is perfect in mercy, unfailing in love and faithfulness. A God who loved you into existence, has sustained you in love, and promises to redeem you in love. All things are in God. But it's also an act of participation. It'd be a little like this bleeding woman coming back. Coming forward and taking these elements is your way of saying, I'm going to live in God this week. I'm not just going to leech off God. I'm not just going to take from God what I perceive I need. What I really need is God. That's why you take elements that represent God's self. You take his body into your body, his blood into your blood. There's a union that's happening every week when we come together as a church because we recognize we don't need things from God, we need God. If you are in the room this morning and you are sensing you need God and you want to live with God, you don't have to understand what that means. You don't have to have that all figured out. You don't have to know what the next step is. You just have to want God. And if you want God, then come forward. Be a part of the church. That's what we're all trying to figure out. In just a minute, I'll invite you to stand if you're able or if you'd like to. We'll dismiss you starting in the back rows to come down our center aisle here. We'll have communion distributors at our communion tables on both sides of our stage. They will say to you the body and blood of Christ. I invite you to say amen. And then we invite you to take a prepackaged communion cup back to your seat using the side aisles. You can take those elements during this last song as you feel led. I'll come up in a couple minutes to close our service. So stand with me if you're able and you'd like, and come to the table. God, we thank you that you love us enough to meet us where we are, that if there are things in our lives that are plaguing us that we care about, you're in that. You want to meet us in that place. Thank you for that. And we love you for that. Help us to get to the place where we love you regardless of whether you heal us or you don't, regardless of whether we understand or we don't, regardless of whether you answer or not. Help us to see you as you are, that we might love you as we should. Help us to see and understand that our greatest need is you, nothing more, nothing less. And in that way, you are not only our greatest need, but you become our greatest want and our greatest joy. Bless us as we come to your table this morning. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
mountains, the valleys below, with the breath of your mighty wings. Treasures of wisdom and things to be known are hidden inside of your hand. And in this fortunate turn of events, you ask me to be your friend. Ask me to be your friend. And you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past. And you are my first, you are my last, you are my future and my past. Constellations are swimming inside the breath of your desire.